Do you consider resilience as an important skill when investing in real estate? Join us today on this episode of Real Estate Conversations with ḥǐǒ, as we have a serial entrepreneur, a full-time real estate investor who has been investing in real estate for over 5 years and focuses on large multifamily assets. Currently, he owns and manages a portfolio of about 75 plus doors across Canada. We would like to welcome Rodrigo Parada to the show. Welcome, Rodrigo. How have you been?
Thank you for having me, ḥǐǒ. I'm doing amazing. Really excited about this interview.
Excellent. So we'd like to know more about who you are. How did you get into real estate? And 5 years ago, what were you doing before? And talk about your story, like your background.
Okay,
we'd like to know more.
With pleasure, ḥǐǒ. So as you mentioned, I've been investing in real estate for the past 5 years. Prior to doing this full time, I was working for a railroad, one of the major railroads in Canada. I was a manager for them for close to 8 years, supervised a team of 50 unionized employees that were responsible for traffic from Winnipeg all the way to Halifax. So dealing in transportation mainly. And prior to that, I was fortunate enough to do some real estate appraisal at the residential level for a couple of months before joining the railroading company. So that's what I was doing before making the plunge into real estate full-time.
Oh, okay. And why did you choose real estate investing, and specifically why multifamily? Like, there are other assets people invest in. Like, did you feel more comfortable? Did you feel more safe, or how did you go?
That's a very good question. And I think that I'll answer from my personal perspective. So the reason why I went with multifamily is because that's what I knew, right? So when I was doing the real estate appraisal, I was appraising single family homes, but also small multifamily. So let's say like the 2 to 6 door type of asset class. And in parallel to that, I started my more recent education of real estate through the Bigger Pocket podcast. Sorry. So that's the reason why I went into the multifamily asset class, is because in my mind, it was the asset class that I had a bit more knowledge about. And also from a risk perspective, I like the idea of having more than one door that was responsible for handling my expenses. And that's the reason why I went down that path.
Oh, wow. That is great. Yes, that does tell you that, when you're in a house, maybe with one tenant or maybe with two, and they leave, your entire mortgage or 50% of that mortgage is jeopardized. But whereas if you're in a larger multifamily, like a 50 unit, that's not even a consideration, right? They left, the new one will come. That does not affect you, right? So
that's it. Yes. So I wanted peace of mind. And when I initially started, I was still working my 9 to 5. So I was looking for something that could be, quote unquote, big enough that I could delegate certain tasks so I could still do my 9 to 5. And then, you know how it is with these things, you buy one, you only need that first one. Then after that, you get another one. And then, it keeps on snowballing. And that's really what happened with me and my investing career. So the multifamily, like you just mentioned, is just, for peace of mind, risk mitigation. And it was just simpler for me to get into that initially.
Oh, nice. And you're just closing on a deal next week, which is in Alberta.
Yes.
With 34 or 36 units, right?
It's actually 38 units. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. Yes. So my first acquisition in Alberta.
Oh, nice.
I'm from Quebec. So the majority of my portfolio is in La Belle Province. I invested in some deals in Ontario, but now I'm closing and getting the keys to this 38 unit asset in Alberta. I'm really excited about it.
Well, congratulations for that. Now, from a real estate perspective, right? When people get started in real estate, they take the knowledge and everything. What would you consider as the most important skill for real estate investing, right? I know you're more on resilience, but is that the only skill, or what do you consider, and why do you consider as the most important trait or skill for a real estate investor?
That's an amazing question, and it took me a while to get to this realization. So I'll explain my answer after they give it to you. So obviously, I think that the most important trait that we can have as real estate investors, but basically as an entrepreneur, is resilience, as you just alluded to, because whether it's through historical examples or even through memes, like we've seen different manifestation of people that are just on the verge of success or winning or whatever you want to define it as. And if they just kept up with it for a bit more, they would have, completed what they set out to do. So that's what I mean by resilience being the most important trait, because, when you're doing this full time, or really just in life, when you think about it, you're being told no the majority of the time. You're trying to do a creative deal. You're sending in an offer that's almost, embarrassing in the numbers, or you're trying to get something financed and something changes the day before and you're getting no's and no's and no's. So the reason why I believe that resilience is the most important trait is that you can deal with the rejection and take it for what it is, which is basically another step in the path that you're on, and it's not the end of the path. And if you're able to deal with that, then you're unstoppable, right? Because we see these things as just part of the process, and they're not situations or events that end up defining our person.
Wow. That's such a great insight, eh? You have to be really strong in that mindset, because yes, we have had times as real estate investors as well that, that, oh, no, and things don't work. No, things don't work. No, things don't work. But then there comes a point where, oh God, it's not working. Like, should we think of other options? Or do we need to reinvent? Or what do we need to do? Because whatever we are doing right now isn't really not working. But having real resiliency and just going that one more time may just open up the doors.
Yes, and thank you for saying what you just said, because resilience is the first step, but what you've just alluded to is potentially like the second most important trait to an entrepreneur or any successful business, is the ability to adapt and pivot.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So if you're in the mindset that you're able to deal with the emotional hit of being told no, or something doesn't work the way that you intended, and then you take that rejection and that hardship and you pivot and you spin into something else and you're able to move forward, then what you're doing is you're basically building a symbolic callus, right? You're just getting used to this. And I strongly believe that what we're doing on a daily basis as entrepreneurs is we're just getting better at doing harder things. That's really all there is to it, right?
Yes. And learning from mistakes is what I believe the most important thing comes, because either what I believe now is that either you're going to fail and you're going to learn, or you're going to get the success that you're after. There are only two things, right? But most of the people do break down, and I have as well previously, when you have failure. And it's not just one failure that breaks you down, it's failure after failure after failure. But resilience, I think, is something that you just push on no matter what.
Yes. And again, like, that's a very good point about failures, because the moment that you realize that failure is part of the process, right? You learn by failing, like you just said. You can actually mind hack yourself. You can work against your own inner little voice and use that to your advantage. And what I mean by it is The moment that you objectively look at a failure as part of the learning process and not a result in itself, then every single failure that is bound to come across your path will become a learning experience and not something else. I'm of the school of thought that it's not win or lose, but it's win or learn. I purposely put myself in situations where I'm going to fail because I'm trying something that's out of the ordinary or bigger than what I've accomplished in the past, because I'm always pushing my boundaries. But I expect failure to happen, but I know that it will not define me. I know that it's part of the process. And one thing on top of that, like I'm at a stage where I'm comfortable sharing about my failures because I know that it doesn't define me, right? Like it's part of the process. And the reason why I have these failures is because I'm trying. And that's how you grow, right? Growing is uncomfortable. Failing is uncomfortable. But I believe that as long as we keep on failing forward, we're moving forward.
Absolutely.
Even if it's not graceful.
No, failure is a big part of, but failure and learning and continuing to move on, that's where the success happens, right? Having a failure, having a no, and getting a breakdown brings you back to zero.
Yes. And like that's such a strong thing that you just said. It's so important because it's true that we have those moments. That's part of life with capital L. That's part of being a human being and being a social animal and interacting with other people and being in the society that we live in. But at the end of the day, we don't let that define us. And I think that's the most important thing. Like it's bound to happen. It's better to embrace it. And the moment that we end up doing it, that's when we start to actually exponentially grow. And we're able to go after bigger and better things,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, dwelling on to that, I want to go to the next question, but it's on the same thing. Considering those failures, when you started, I'm pretty sure you faced some challenges. What were some of the hardest challenges, one or two examples that you really want, or maybe the one example that you want to share with the audience and the viewers and the listeners, which you really want that, okay, if you were to start all over again, that is something that you would not do. That's a massive learning that you took when in your journey, right?
Yeah.
That's because, when these things happen, some things get stuck to your heart that, I knew I could go that route, but I still took this one and then I failed.
Yeah, great question. So I know exactly what I'm going to answer to this because it's such an important one for me. My first mistake / failure that I did when I started out was to not properly structure my JV, my joint venture, right? I'm a firm believer of working in teams. I'm a team player. I've been, captain of most of the teams that I was playing with growing up. So I understand that leadership position and what it means. But when I started my real estate journey, I put myself in a situation where I had partners, but I didn't know enough about the potential pitfalls about structuring a partnership that I didn't protect myself the way that I should have. Now, luckily enough, we're not talking about something that ended up costing me money, but it ended up costing me time, and it ended up costing me, more importantly, the way that I felt about myself and my partners at the moment. So what I could share with the audience is that whenever you're looking, and I hope you do, because there's so much strengths in partnership, right? There's so much advantage in partnering up with someone and learning from them and pooling resources and going after something big, like I'm not saying not to do otherwise, but please take the time to have an open-hearted conversation about full transparency. What are our objectives? What are we doing? What happens if this happens? And please consult with the experts. Talk to your lawyers, talk to your accountants, make sure that you have all the information before signing any piece of paper, because everything's great when you're buying. Everything's great when you're in the acquisition mode. When things start to change and you see the true nature of people is when you're starting to see the hardships. right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
you want to be able to put yourself in a position where when you're going through hard times, you only focus on finding the solution to the problem and not having to deal with the emotional side of things that have to do with, having a partnership with other human beings.
Absolutely. No, that is such a great answer, right? Because these are the most common situations that happen with people, and that's where things go wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And then
go ahead. Sorry.
What happens is the people don't focus on what went wrong. They're just, oh no, real estate investing is bad, or real estate entirely is completely bad, and it is not made for, like, it's just a lie or something. Like, people have these beliefs then that start to go on, right? That's where what you said, exactly what happens with many people, and then they blame it on the real estate instead of looking inside and taking a deep evaluation of what went wrong, where it went wrong, and
Absolutely.
Can it or not.
Yeah, and 100%. And I think that what you just alluded to is the trait that we need to work on as people that are in a leadership position, where it's simply accountability, right?
Yes.
If you don't have accountability, if you're not able to look at yourself in the mirror and realize where you went wrong, you're going to keep on repeating the same mistakes over and over again. And we all know that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And I'm not crazy, right? So it's important to learn from them. And also, going back to the question that you asked and the way that you asked it, like, we're talking about when I first started. So you can already assume, or the audience can, that the first partnership was with friends or family. That's how it starts, with people around us. So we've known them previously before getting into a business partnership with them. So ideally, you want to protect that relationship, that personal relationship, and the business partnership. So you got to separate the two, and you got to make sure that both of them are protected in their integrity, and that you're always keeping your actions aligned with your main objective, which is to have success. And have success in business and have success in personal relationships are two different things. So you got to protect yourself.
Good. Wow. That's such an interesting conversation, right? That we're having. Wow, amazing. Okay, but just to elude the topic and coming to the market and the times we are in now, right? We already have 10 interest rate hikes. There's one more coming in September on the way, right? So which will make it 11. Considering the times right now, I know the deals are really not there on the market. Sellers are scared to sell because they don't really want a low price for their money. Buyers don't really want to offer a market price because they think that they want a deal and they're in for a deal, right? So the deals are really either not happening and the sellers are just waiting, oh, we don't want to sell right now. Or the buyers are saying, oh, we don't want to pay, let's say, $5 million for a property. They know it's worth 5 million, but they'll just purposely, we'll only pay 4, and that deal never goes through. So how are you finding that kind of situation in terms of deals? And then I'd also like to ask you, in terms of raising capital, how is that going for you and your team?
Wow. Okay. So good questions. So how am I finding the market? Personally, I love it, and I'll explain why. Because right now, in this market cycle, or the phase of the market that we're in, as opposed to where we were 2 years ago, there's actual conversations happening, right? And before we get to a no, now we actually have either a realtor or an owner taking our call, answering our email, because what it was 2 years ago, it was simply, no, raise your price and then we'll talk, right? So that's the part that I'm really appreciating. But if I continue my train of thought, the way that I see this market cycle, I'll use a sport analogy if I can. Like every sports organization, every year, after the season is over, after the championship has been given to the winning team, what they do is that they look at their rules, right? They try to change or tweak a little thing, and then there's a new season that starts. So the game is always happening. It's just that rules are getting tweaked. And I feel that that's the same thing in real estate. The game is always going to happen. right? We can talk to somebody that has more experience than us that can talk about interest rates in the 90s and 80s, and then we're going to feel better about what we're seeing right now. The game is always happening. The rules are changing for the season that we're in. It doesn't mean that the game stops and that you should stop playing. So personally, the reason why I'm appreciating this market cycle is that it forces me as the acquisition guy that I am to start thinking differently and strategize about the acquisition with a different perspective. And what I truly appreciate is that since we have this common foe or enemy, which is the financing situation, it's not the prices personally that I find, because I'm willing to pay whatever it is if the valuation is there. But if I'm facing challenges in my financing, then that enables me to have a different conversation with the seller and the realtor, right? So that's when we start getting into a more creative and let's say, seller's financing, because what you're basically trying to achieve is that you're not negotiating, you're educating, right?
Yes.
Because the expectations are up here, the market is down here, and then there's that limbo between the two of them that we're playing in. And my responsibility, whether I get the deal or not, is to always work for the deal. And what that means is that I'm looking for a win-win situation, right?
Yes.
A good negotiation is when the both parties feel about it because they didn't get 100%. That's a good negotiation, right? So that's what it is right now with this market cycle. So if it means that somebody wants something at 5 mil, I know that my financing is going to be around, I don't know, with DCR, let's say 3.2, then what can we do to bridge the gap? Because as a deal maker, I have my investors, and I know if I go to see them for a regular deal that doesn't have, so much upside, but it's just a buy and hold. If we're going to be putting down, 40% or getting a 60% loan to value a mortgage, it's not going to be as sexy for some of our investors as opposed to something else. But if we have a VTB in there with some good terms and the seller ends up getting his price, but at a different time, but I'm getting my terms, then I win. And that's what I feel is happening right now. And we're getting a bit more into. And I think that the sooner that we understand this sophistication of the acquisition cycle, the better served we are as real estate investors.
Absolutely. That was such a detailed and great answer. Thank you. I would like to ask for our viewers and listeners, right? Any tips? Like there have been so many, right? But if somebody is just starting up from zero and have zero experience, what are some couple of tips for those people who want to get started in real estate investing, especially on the multifamily side?
Yeah. So that's a very it's a very tough thing to answer, but I'll give a few. So first things first, network.
Yes.
Network. You got to get your network is your net worth, to get into the cliche, but that's so true. And I'm saying this from personal experience. For the first 4 years of my investing career, I was listening to podcasts and that was it. I was doing my own thing, not really interacting with anyone. And the moment I started networking, that's when my business exponentially grew. It exploded because where you are today and where you want to go, the only thing missing between the two is people. Real estate is not, buildings. When you think about it, it's a people business, right?
Yes.
So the sooner that we get around the right people in the right rooms, asking the right questions, surrounded by the right stakeholders, the faster you get to your objectives and where you want to go. So first tip, network. Second tip would be get the basic level of knowledge as soon as possible. And what I mean by that is, we could talk about books, we could talk about techniques, we could talk about whatever it is. Every single human being is different. So before you start actually to consider buying something, get educated. Get educated to the level of comfort that you want to achieve, but do that you owe it to yourself. Don't go in dark. And I think that's an understanding of your audience. And the third one would be figure out why you're doing this. Like focus on the why. Like what's your motivation? You know, like is it financial freedom? Is it having the big house and the cars? Is it investing in other businesses? Is it a path to something else? Like do some introspection. Don't just focus on the end result and what you're seeing on social media and the lifestyle you're trying to achieve. Figure out what motivates you, because that's what's going to keep you going when you're going through hell. Like Churchill said it, you know, if you're going through hell, why would you stop?
Yes.
And the reason why we don't stop, or the how we're able to keep on going, is because we have a strong enough motivation or a why. So the sooner that we understand that about ourselves, the easier it'll become for us in the long run. And I think that's what I have for the 3 tips. And the last one would be just reach out to me through my social media, and I'll see how I can help you. I'm always open to help people and meet new people and learn about them and their story. So that kind of goes with number 1. But yeah, network and people, and yeah, get yourself out there.
Absolutely. And people, if you directly want to reach out to Rodrigo, when we release the episode, we'll have all the social handles for him so that you can reach out to him directly.
Thank you, sir.
Very good. Very good. Well, it was such a nice Q&A session, or the podcast episode. Like I was really amazed. The mindset is, I think, the most important thing. And resilience, you can name it anything. It just comes from within, right? So if everything works within you, it will work, right? And just if you're failing, just take that one more step. You will definitely succeed. Is the crux of this episode. Like it was amazed. On some points, I did get some goosebumps too, right?
I'm happy to hear that. It's thank you for saying it. And you know, resilience, grit, whatever word you want to use, that's what it's all about. Just keep at it. If you know what you're doing is right, and you have a bigger goal than just your own personal being and yourself, and you're doing it for other people or to inspire people or whatever it is, you become unstoppable, right? So and
absolutely,
it's grit.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we really appreciate your time, Rodrigo, today, and we hope to talk to you soon again. Thank you very much for your time and coming on the show. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.